The recently concluded G20's B20 meet will now be remembered as Nagaland's Red Letter Day, as the state has received proposals up to the tune of 4.5k crores. The summit saw the participation of delegates from about 29 foreign countries, some visiting Nagaland for the first time in their life. As Chief Minister Nifi Rio has been constantly reminding the people that the state government doesn't own any land, the influx of investment proposals will be a huge relief. According to DIPR, the business-to-business and business-to-government meetings witnessed signing of a memorandum of understanding between the government of Nagaland and investors for investments in renewable energy to the tune of Rs 1,000 crore over the next 3 years. There were other business propositions to the tune of Rs 2,000 crore in agro and food processing, rubber, MSME, medical tourism, sports and IT sectors, which will further be explored and firmed up in due course. And now, to talk on this particular B20 meet and if it was successful and what can the people of Nagaland actually expect out of all these investments that are pouring in after the B20 meet. So we've got our senior news analyst Alangoli, who will be joining us in this newsroom, and we'll be discussing the various aspects of whether the B20 summit that was held recently in Nagaland was a success or not. So first of all, thank you, sir, for joining me on this primetime newsroom. So getting straight to the question, I mean, it's Easter season and we are all Christians, and today is Good Friday too. So was this the best gift Nagaland could receive, that too during Easters?
Yeah, right. I think we all love money. I love money. I don't know whether you love money or not, but I think especially for the government, whenever it comes to topics of development and money, I think it's a very good news for us. I'll say that definitely this is a very good Easter gift for all of us. But then I think, jokes aside, the way forward for Nagaland here is not necessarily about how many companies from foreign countries or how many multi-corporations will come and invest in Nagaland. That's not the question itself. The question is implementation here, Akive. And when we are talking about developing communities that are just starting out to develop their economies, the question is more about trust or the lack of trust for foreign investors to invest in a particular sector. Because first thing first, you have to have a house that is already established. You have to have at least a semblance of economy that can generate revenue for you to be able to have some kind of a level of trust for you to say, oh, I think this economy looks good for me, I'm going to invest in this. But if we have a situation where our infrastructure is not developed, where we have an industry that has not that does not have the prerequisite parameters of development for them to actually trust you for their investment, then there is a problem. Otherwise, while it is a very good thing that we have, according to news reports, at least 4,500 crores being invested in the state in various sectors, that is good news, yes. The way forward will be a lot more, because it will involve a lot of planning, thinking, and most importantly, the idea of transparency and implementation at a ground level. But yes, definitely I would say it's a very good Easter gift for all of us, Akive.
All right, so I'm sure, I'm sure today being Good Friday, I'm sure most people in Nagaland woke up with a smile and also a ray of happiness as the state has received investment proposals to the tune of 4.5 crore.
Right.
I mean, but sir, but the main question is, so will Nagaland be able to provide the infrastructure at this present moment? I mean, there's a lot of money. I think this would be a first of its kind, where we see so much investment getting poured in and proposals being proposed to the government and also businesses. But one pertinent question that everyone seems to be asking is, can Nagaland actually provide the infrastructure?
Oh yeah, I was watching this news, and I think the first thought that came to my mind was the proposals. If you look at the proposals that have been at least proposed by the companies who will be investing in Nagaland, you will see the breakup of the proposal being given to Nagaland only in the sectors of practical production sectors, agriculture, for example, food processing. And then you have medical tourism. So the investment is not so much on the spiritual, cultural side of the state. For example, it's tourism potential that have been touted often, but then not so much on it. And we have been talking a lot about, for example, forestry. There has not been any word in regard to that, and I don't know if any companies have made any proposals in these areas. But if you look at the amounts that have been proposed to be as part of the investments that the corporations are making, then they are all on production side. So coming to your question, I think if at all the proposals come about and they actually sign agreements where the money will be used to set up some kind of a developmental project to actually push forward the funds, then I think the money itself will constitute building of infrastructure. So generally, by what I understand, when companies invest in a state, then the proposals, the funds that are being invested in are also used to build infrastructure. So if, say, you invest 5,000 crores to build a sports stadium, so that 5,000 crores will not be only to build up athletes, their training, their diets, their training programs, or even enabling them to compete in international events, the funding for participation. It will not only be for that, but it will also be to build concrete infrastructure. It could be water supply, electricity, it could be building grounds, buying football kits or sporting kits, or even for their food. So all these proposals that are coming in, I believe, will also include components of infrastructure building, because unless you have infrastructure first, you can't have the facilities that you want to have later on. So I believe that the funding also has the component of building infrastructure at the foundational level. That is first. But again, we'll have to consider, is the 4,500 crores that is being proposed to be given to the state only for production, or is it going to be part of the infrastructural push? So there are different components here. So far we have only been reading general details about how much this company is investing or how much this company will be investing. So these are only general parameters that is trying to describe the nature of investment, but not necessarily what it will comprise. Whether is it for production, is it for infrastructure, or is it only for tertiary services, or is it just consulting services? So we don't know the details about that. So assuming that the funds are not for the funds being given or being proposed by the corporations to Nagaland for development are not for infrastructure, which means Nagaland will have to bear the cost of infrastructure building. The burden will be on the state of Nagaland. So if your question would be angled on that, I would definitely say no, definitely Nagaland is not ready to accept any investments because we don't have infrastructure in the first place. That is something we should remember. So I am assuming that the funds being proposed by the corporations and the companies into Nagaland are also those inclusive of the infrastructure development components. So it will come with that, I'm assuming.
All right, sir. I mean, also Nagaland is also known as the land of festivals, and when the B20 summit delegates were pouring into Dimapur airport, I mean, we saw huge optimism from the foreign delegates about how excited they were about the investment opportunities in the state. And also a very important and also a sector which Nagaland is already equipped with, sir. So this is like, sir, how can Nagaland maximize its prospects in terms of cultural and ecotourism? I mean, how can Nagas turn this sector into a revenue-making industry?
Oh yeah, that's a very good question, but unfortunately I'm not an expert in tourism economics. But what I can say for sure is this: so far, according to what we have been hearing, I think some corporations they have proposed to invest at least 1,000 crore in renewable energy. and that's a nice thing. And then another component of the funds that is about rupees 1,500 crore will go into biofuels. And then there is another proposal that says that the corporations will invest at least 2,000 crore in I think about 3 or 4 sectors, that is information technology, agriculture based businesses, and food processing, and of course medical tourism. So I was a little bit surprised because you did not see that much mention of sports, which we have been touting as one of our best strengths. And then tourism is supposed to be the heart of our strength. So I was surprised that I didn't see any mention of that. So right now what we have here is I think we should use tourism as a tool that will build the economy of the rural areas first, because tourism right now is somewhat of an elitist diversion for Nagaland, in a sense that I think it is a very common conversation topic that only people who have the resources can actually go up to Kohima and attend the Hornbill Festival. That's a joke we say. Yes. And for people in the rural areas who make barely 150 in a day, while people in the urban areas make at least 237 rupees in a day as day wage, the disparity is very wide. So basically our tourism industry has been built around the urban elitists and affluent sections of the community. So I think the best way to magnify the local strength and maximize the resources that tourism can generate should first be started from the villages, from the rural areas, from the remote areas, because that's where the real Nagaland is, and not in the urban areas. So I believe that the first step should be to develop infrastructure in the rural areas and use that infrastructure to attract tourists, visitors, and slowly I think that's where we can start off, because one of the first way back 2003 when Hornbill Festival was first incepted, I remember coming all the way from Wokha to attend it, and it cost us a lot of money just to go up there. So for instance, if Hornbill Festival was a festival centered around the villages in the remote areas, I think that will be a very good starting point. So based on that, we can build infrastructure and slowly bring in services, and then we can spread from there. I think that's I think that might be a feasible idea, Akive.
All right, so a lot of Nagas would have had a smile when they read the papers today. I mean, like such
Right.
a lot of money coming into the state.
Right.
But apart from the positivity also, there is this burning question as to, do you think with the amount of money that is coming into the state, that gives another opportunity for corruption to actually boom? And also, apart from which, setting aside all pessimism and negativity, sir, I mean, like, do you really believe that just say a common villager, maybe in Pomching area or in Mon area or even in the eastern sectors, even in the remotest place, do you think that this investment that is coming in will actually benefit the life of a common public Naga?
Yeah, I would imagine like the entire 4,500 crore goes to the people. That would be awesome, isn't it, Akivi?
Yes.
I think the idea of transparency and accountability in financial management in Nagaland is a topic that remains evergreen. I don't know. I hope that there will be some kind of a system in place where we actually put these funds out in front of the public and let them have an idea of how it is being spent, where is it going, and how is it being used at the ground level. Because just recently the Chief Minister of Nagaland had said that the center has now started using an online system as part of its e-governance transparency system, where all the schemes and projects that comes into Nagaland will be and can be viewed online, which means every official department and scheme components will be updated there. So any person, any public member can view it. So I think that's a very good idea. But again, when we talk of Nagaland, we have heard a lot from opposition parties how Nagaland is an economy where the resources are all handled by a very small community of leaders, community leaders and government leaders. So we have a lot of associations, we have a lot of semi-government organizations that are led by people who are in affluent places, whether they are from the government or whether they are from the community. So we say, you know, Thun Manu Laga organization, you know, these ministers organization, that ministers organization. So if we could somehow come up with a system where we can see that transparency is being exercised, I think that would be the first step to actually seeing development on the ground. Unless there is a system that has that shows some kind of a transparency and accountability in how the funds are being used, how the schemes are being implemented, then I think no matter how much money people pour into the state or how many investors come into the state to invest, I don't think that people will really see development the way it is being envisioned in the first place. Akive.
All right, sir. I wish we could speak more, but we've run out of time. But thank you so much for joining me on this primetime newsroom and explaining to us what are the prospects and also what, in hindsight, actually, whether this 4,500 crore investment proposal that have come through the B20 meet will actually help in making a Naga's life more comfortable. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Akive. We'll talk about it more later.
So that was our senior news analyst, Al Nguli, and he just mentioned as to, well, it sounds good on paper that a lot of money, 4,500 crores, is actually going to come into Nagaland. But the main question remains as to whether Nagaland can provide the platform to these investors to actually reassure that Nagaland's economy is also strong and that Nagaland can also be a revenue generating state. Apart from which, it is also what our senior news analyst said was, it's basically about the implementation on the ground level that is now yet to be seen, and that is what we have to wait and see whether what looks good on paper, whether it will look good when it starts happening in the ground. So that will be the question, and we will be waiting to see whether a common public Naga's life is actually helped and is actually even more comfortable after such huge investments proposals are being poured in. Well, that was all for this hour's bulletin. For more news and updates, stay tuned to Onville TV. Goodbye.